Alright, welcome back to More Than PG's Gaming. I'm your host, Moonay, and today we are playing some more No Man's Sky on Permadeath. So a lot of things have happened since the last time I was in. We did get our hands onto some valuable stuff. We have some stuff that's kind of broken, but that's fine. I think I hit a few things, and I've just been warping without repairing them. I repaired my hyperdrive upgrades, so... and I just warped after going ahead and recharging my warp cell, and I warped once. So here we are, and we use 3% with this ship's current outline. In case anybody's wondering, I have 3 S-class hyperdrive upgrades on my technology slots, and then 3 more on my regular slots. Alright, so this class of ship currently gets the 2371.6 for hyperdrive range, which is pretty decent with the upgrades. And I found myself some ingredients for our emerald and indium drives. Before you start this trek in Permadeath to try to go to the center, if you're going to do it manually by warping, it is highly suggested that you stock up on warp cells. As you can kind of see, I have 2 here, but if you look at my exosuit, I have a lot more. Okay, this gets annoying really quick. And then you'll want to go ahead and warp as far as you can. So I did take hold, and I did get my hands onto quite a few warp cells. I don't know if you guys can hear me very well through this. It's very loud on my end, but warp cells are key for this. You need a lot of them. Even if you have all of your slots unlocked, give me a sec. Even if you have all of your inventory slots open, you can try to get as many warp cells as you need. It will still take you roughly about 1.5 the amount of cargo you have. So we're looking at probably really close to about 60 or so times 5, so almost 300 warp cells that you're going to need. So just a heads up, if you're planning on doing this, it is not a cheap method to go across the galaxy. So, and you want a very fuel efficient ship to do so. I recommend something like the exotic that I found, which was very convenient because when I got it, I was playing with somebody else, and they had their ship pop up roughly about the same time as mine. Mine showed up literally less than 10 seconds later. So that's how I got mine. They got the exact same ship. It was kind of hilarious, but I did the upgrades and I thought it was best to do it this way. There is another method that you can use to try to get to the center, and that is just simply grabbing glyphs from talking to aliens and going to the unmarked graves and collecting those, and then finding a portal and refilling the portal, charging it up, and then putting in the coordinates to get closer to the center. The problem with that is that whenever I tried to look up coordinates in Permadeath, I wasn't sure if they were the same as in normal mode, and nobody seems to have a direct answer, and there doesn't seem to be a really good database for that, at least not for Permadeath. There's great ones for all the other modes, but just not Permadeath, and I don't know why that is. Maybe it's because they are the same addresses, I don't know, but that's why I'm making this trek to go all the way to relatively close to the center in this short amount of time. I don't know if you've been noticing, but right at the moment, I am roughly about 100,000 light years away from my target. And I do save on occasion. So let's take a quick look to see how far we are from the center. Anybody that's wondering, so I started at 720,000 light years away from the center. I am now only 104,000. Okay, this is very time consuming. And I don't suggest anybody do it if they are wanting to try to get to the center, but don't have a whole lot of time. The expected time to get there is probably at least 20 hours. Okay? Give or take. I take about that long because I also stop. Like, I had to make 2 stops. I had to stop somewhere for cadmium, and I had to stop somewhere for emerald. And I periodically stop at space stations. And the reason why I stop at space stations is so that I can save my game and I can quit, upload my data up to the cloud, because I have PlayStation Plus. And again, this is on PlayStation that I'm doing this. And that was really weird. You can see how this can get kind of repetitive really quickly. There are a lot of benefits of actually warping though, and one of the key benefits of warping, especially this fast, is when you reach a new system, you can immediately pull up your menu and warp again while the thing is loading for the system. Whereas if you try to do anything else, it'll make you wait. So just a heads up, it is faster to do it that way. So while this screen is loading, you can bring up your thing and immediately open up the menu and go. So you can speed this up a little bit by doing that. But otherwise, it is a long, long process of getting from where you start to the center. And depending on where you start off in your Permadeath playthrough, you may or may not have to go further to your destination than me, or you might be closer, you know, which means you cut down on plenty of time. I know some people who started like about 100,000 light years closer, and honestly, that is ridiculous if you have to spend that extra 100,000 light years trying to get there. So when you're playing Permadeath, when you get into space, that's one of the first things that you want to double check after you get your hyperdrive. You want to see how far you are from the center, because it may or may not be worth the time and effort to try to get enough stuff to do it. Okay, you might want to just decide to start all over depending on how far you are, because especially if you start off and you're like as far as I was, or further. Because 100,000 light years is like an hour or two of play, okay? And the entire reason why I say 20 hours is an estimate is because I make those stops. I had to make those detours. And at one point I had to restock on my warp cells, so just a heads up, that is something that you have to do. In addition, you constantly have to save, because bad things can happen. You can get subspaced scanned and be attacked. What the great thing is, you can warp while you're being scanned, not while you're fighting enemies. So just be aware that it is a good way to escape them. That's why I never bother to like talk to them. I mean, I could easily pay him, but at the same time, I'm just like, I'm just gonna go. Alright, but each warp is generally between about 500 light years and I'm going to say about 800. It's very rarely above the 700 mark though, and it's occasionally above the 600 mark. So just keep that in mind when you're warping. Even though I can warp up to, 800, I generally don't, because the game just doesn't allow me to. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to prepare yourself for that, and if you do the math, it is ridiculously long. It will take you a long time to get to the center. But yeah, this is more or less an update of what's happened. I didn't really have a whole lot of videos before this, mainly because I was like, okay, I'm going to get my warp cells ready. People don't want to see that. They don't want to see me go through the process of warping the first, whatever, 100,000 or so light years. And I've already gone through 600,000 light years. So, which is an incredible amount. Okay? But it is literally hours of doing this. Of just warping. And occasionally stopping. So, and my rule of thumb is don't stop at any place, any system that is has more than one planet, simply because if I want to do any additional warping later on, I want to be able to warp to these places. Mainly because I want to have access to these areas afterwards, because there are a lot of planets I came across that were really interesting, and I've never encountered them in normal mode. And I'm talking about like the thirsty planets as redacted and abandoned, and glassy. So there are plenty of planets out there that I just want to take a look at. Unfortunately, they're usually in undiscovered systems. So, just a heads up, if you're planning on doing this, you're going to have to do some warping afterwards if you're going to want to reach those planets. Or use a portal to get to them, which portals can be useful, but at the same time, if you don't know an address for a place, you could get an error and be thrown to who knows where. So just a heads up, that is incredibly dangerous. I do not recommend it. And once I get actually closer to the center, and I'm talking within 1,000 light years, I'm probably going to check to see if I can find a portal, simply because I know plenty of people will be wanting that address in Permadeath, because it will be a guaranteed progress for them, and it might just be easier to go collect glyphs. The reason why I chose against glyphs is because almost every single planet I landed on was hostile with sentinels, and I didn't want to deal with that. Anybody else that's willing to do that, you're more than welcome to do that, but I want to avoid that at all possible. I think another thing that it might be possible, though, is joining somebody else's game that is kind of close, and then just simply going to back to your own game, and make sure you go to that game's space station, mind you. Okay? That way, and probably to a planet. I'm not really too sure, but that way you actually get access to that player's planet and so forth. That way you can go from your space station directly to another player's space station. So that means it'll get you a lot closer. So those are the two ways that you can make it happen. Okay, I would highly suggest the latter, because it makes it so much easier of just joining somebody else who's gotten close to the center. That way you can just load up your own game and go. Okay, again, it doesn't really matter how full your warp drive is if it's relatively close. Like I said, it's generally 20 per warp, 20% per warp, so just keep that in mind when you're doing it. If you have a upgraded ship with better hyperdrive, it might cost less. Okay, so just kind of keep that in mind. So I have broken the 100,000 mark. I have less than 100,000 light years to go, and hopefully this all works out. You know, so kind of keep a lookout for my next video. It's going to have the coordinates of that portal if I can get my hands onto it. Mainly because I want to have people have access to it. So if you're one that's wanting to use the portal method, go for it. Whoa, that's dangerous. Warped right into a ring. Okay, I am not gonna deal with this system right now. I'm gonna go to the next one, and next system I have with only a single planet with a space station is the one I'm gonna go for. I just didn't like the situation with the ring, so. But yeah, keep an eye out for that address. And if you happen to see me online and you are on my friends list for whatever reason, you know, just shoot me a message. I'll probably join, or go ahead and load up my game and get close. Alright? But there's going to be a limited time, so just a heads up. Alright? So I'm going to keep warping here, and hopefully this was very interesting. And hopefully you guys get to see me at the center eventually. Thank you for watching.